Hi everybody, welcome to JayEmm Friends. I am James, aka JayEmm, and this is Ben.
Hey.
He's from the channel Dad Cars, and we're currently in the DB9. Tell us a little bit about the car, Ben. How long have you had this for now?
Well, it's coming basically 2 years. Basically 2 years I've had it for, and done about 10,000 miles on it as well.
If you didn't know who Ben is and why it's called the DB9, that's for one very simple reason.
It's called the DB9 because I use it as my dad car. It's been my daily dad car over the last 2 years. Yep, as I say, 10,000 miles, and I bought it when I had 3 children. So 2 in the back, 1 in the front. But now I've got 4 children. And also I'm trying to grow my YouTube channel, and it's very, very, very expensive to self-fund start a YouTube channel, isn't it, James?
Very time consuming, very money consuming, very everything consuming, honestly. I think Ben's got off to a flying start by YouTube standards, but it still takes a lot of time. And the simple fact is, 4 kids, 3 seats.
Yeah.
So the DB9 has got to go.
But yeah, primarily we need something more practicality.
Now, we recently actually had a little bit of a discussion as to what could come next for Ben, and if you'd like to see that, please head over to the Dad Cars channel, give that video a watch. He also, I'm sure, will be very grateful for a subscribe, because honestly, I know what it's like. When you're a new YouTuber, every single one really makes a difference. So then, why is it that Ben's here today? You've probably seen his car on my main channel, JayEmm on Cars, a few times. Well, this is for one very simple reason. He's moving out of the DB9 because he needs to do something sensible. Meanwhile, another friend of mine who has the automotive tastes of a particularly unruly 12-year-old really should be buying something sensible. And I think for him, this, or something very much like it, could actually be that. Now, at this point in time, Anthony hasn't yet been out in the DB9. I'm going to make some predictions for you all. Now, we'll see how many I get right. I think he's going to say it's a good-looking car. I personally think they've sort of dated a little bit by now, the early DB9s. I think he'd be more of a Vantage type person, really. V12 Vantage, maybe. It's almost certainly too quiet for him. It's definitely too comfortable as well. And I think he'd say that he really doesn't mind the fact that his cars, both the 370Z and the R8 GT, are really loud, really noisy, and really stiff, and not actually massively usable from that standpoint. The Z's nearly practical, but I'm sure he's busy making excuses as to why he doesn't need anything sensible.
And I'm going to predict, because I was a massive fan of JDM cars in my 20s. Then I had the Lotus Elise. And then I went to this. I was pleasantly surprised. My prediction is that he's going to like it a little bit more than you think.
I hope so. But were we right? Let's find out.
Hello guys.
Hey. Hello.
So James, you're thinking that this could be the car that finally makes me grow up.
I'm hopeful.
It is a beautiful car. But you know me, it's all about the driving. So I think I need to jump in. And I think I'm going to bring my my driving dynamics consultant, Damani, our resident racing driver.
Don't hold back, yeah? I want you to.
I won't hold back, don't worry. I won't hold back.
Excellent.
So we're out in the DB9. Now, the ironic thing is, I'm a dad, and that's my son. However, if you've watched 4 Men and an Aston, you'll know that the back seats don't fit all children. Maybe Ben's children from Dad Cars because they're quite small, but my child definitely did not fit in the back. So make sure you check out that video if you haven't done so already, after you've watched this, of course. I'm sitting here cruising in auto, and I'm told that if you don't put in sport, it's quite lazy on the changes. It doesn't change very briskly at all. In fact, it tries to keep everything quiet and smooth, and that's kind of what you want from a GT car, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what you want. You don't really want a car that's constantly raring to go. I mean, we do, but generally in a GT, a nice, comfortable luxury car, you want to feel like you're gliding and floating. When the gear changes just happen at low RPM, you don't even feel them happening. It's a really nice place to be.
But at the same time, I think with a GT car, what you want also is a certain amount of confidence in the car when you want to give it a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of the beans, as they say. And With this particular car, I can tell straight away, just by driving it, that you can feel it's very well planted on the road. And whilst I would say it's not exactly, you know, Rolls-Royce comfortable, it's not meant to be, it's a sports coupe GT, it definitely feels comfortable enough, but at the same time, I know straight away, as soon as I put my foot down, I'm going to be confident in its ability to handle.
Ben also told us that this car has the Sport Pack, which means I think it's ever so slightly stiffer, slightly different setup on the suspension compared to the non-Sport Pack. He said he drove one without, and it's how you'd expect an old school Jag to drive, very boaty, floaty feeling. So if you did want that full-on comfort, you could get that. But this is like almost a bridge between that and the DBS, which is the more hardcore version of this car.
Apparently this is a 2009 with a sports pack, which results in a 6mm lower ride height. It sits on Bilstein suspension, which are fixed. There's no active damping in this. It is whatever suspension you've got is whatever suspension you've got. And honestly, I quite like the simplicity of that. I also like the fact that the car is constant. I don't have to adapt and change depending on what circumstances we're in or what mode I happen to have chosen, and then don't expect the car to handle in one way because I've forgotten to press the button. Turns out that it's not handling in that way. But I think ultimately, you've got to say, it's a nice place to be. The shape of the dashboard, you have that sense that your feet are right underneath the back of the engine, which is sitting really far back. And another thing that I like about this car is the steering. The steering feels very positive and very precise. As you're going around a bend, you know where you're putting the car. You can kind of feel where there's a little bit more grip or less grip, where you need to dig in with the wheels a little bit more. And I'm not sure, I have to probably drive it a little bit harder, but it feels also like it's got just the right amount of roll. Do you know how some cars, they're so flat that you can't actually feel the outside tyres where they're necessarily digging in? This feels like it's got just the right amount of roll, but not too much. So overall, I have to say, I really like the interior of this car. One of the things you notice when you sat in the driver's seat is it is quite compact in terms of, you don't have as much room as you think, but I think that's because you're kind of expected to kind of just sit back and relax and kind of have your arms out like this, relaxing as you're cruising along on the motorway at 70 miles an hour and no more, of course. Just relaxing and taking it easy and letting the auto box do these nice smooth changes as you enjoy taking in life, driving your Aston Martin. Imagining for a moment that maybe you're James Bond, although I don't think this car actually was driven by James Bond, but it did appear in Spectre.
Yes, that's correct. The interior is very nice, even from a passenger perspective. Just leather everywhere that I can see. Really, really nice. And as you said, in auto, perfect cruiser. But Ben from Dad's Cars gave me one job. Don't let your dad hold back, because he knows what you're like, and he knows that the heart of this car, that 6-litre V12, is probably the thing that will convince you. So use those paddles to chuck it into manual, and let's see what this thing can do.
Well, you know what? All that sense of comfort kind of goes away, and you get a definite feeling that this has a very taut suspension setup. And as you may have felt a little bit there, as you put your foot down out of the corner, it rotates nicely. I was short shifted there a little bit as I was talking, but you definitely feel it pushing you around in a really balanced way, in a way that doesn't scare you as well. There was a brief moment where I was driving this car and it got a little bit squirrely in a straight line when the tyres were cold.
Whoa, I felt that there!
There you go. It really does start to light up the rear tyres. It gets squirrely, but it communicates it to you.
The traction in this car feels pretty good as well, because traction is fully on right now, but it let the back wheels just kind of slightly slip there. That was really nice.
Yeah. And as long as you've got it under control and there isn't excess yaw, it seems to be okay with it, even though it's a relatively old traction control system, not the modern thing. In fact, maybe that's why it's better, kind of let you have a little bit more of a play. But I can tell you something, as you are going into the corners at a slightly brisker speed, you can actually feel the suspension working. And as I said before, it does roll in nicely, but in an interesting way. For example, I put the weight on the front and you can feel it kind of rolling slightly on the front corner, which gives you that sense that the tyre is now digging in as you turn it. But at the same time, it does make you a little bit wary of the fact that you've now taken a little bit of weight off of those rear tyres, and you probably don't want to put your foot down too soon as you're coming out of the corner.
Well, this car's no slouch. This is the facelifted model, so it's got an extra 20 horsepower, I think, at like 470, and obviously it's that big V12, so it's got bucket loads of torque to go with it. And 8k on the rev counter, I'm sure that's closer to around a 7,000 RPM rev limit. It does get up there.
Now, one thing it won't let you do is it won't let you bounce off that limiter. Oh, got to that corner very quickly. A little bit too quickly. A bit quicker than I was expecting, if I'm honest.
Oh, it pulls nicely, doesn't it?
Pulls really nicely. And again, you go into a tighter corner like this one, and you just feel it just dig in nicely on the front. And you know that you can rotate the car round with a little bit of the throttle if you had enough skill, which frankly I don't. He does, but he's under 25, which is why he can't get insured to drive cars like this for the purposes of YouTube. Not yet anyway. That was a really fun ride.
Yeah, I was surprised at how nice it felt through the corners. Obviously this is a big heavy car. It's not like the DBS, but it does have the sport pack. Ben's got some good tyres on this, those Pilot Sport 4S's, and yeah, I'm really impressed. Pulled nicely, handled nicely, but again, when you just want it in auto and you want to cruise, it just becomes a completely different thing. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or whatever way around that is.
Well, I now am not... Look, I've fallen for this car. I like it a lot. But will it make me grow up? I don't know. Let's get back and have a chat with James and Ben and see if the one or two things that I don't like about this car can really be justified as a reason not to buy it. Or maybe I finally might need to grow up and buy myself a proper Grand Tourer.
There's a big smile on my face. I really enjoyed it. There's one thing I didn't like about it. I felt older. Partly because it is a very elegant car, and I think you can drive it when you're younger. What did you think, Damani?
I really liked it. It's got a lot of get up and go. I was surprised. The handling's a lot better than I was expecting as well. And then when you're not trying to go fast and have fun, it was comfy.
It's a Scotland car. It's the perfect Scotland car.
Yeah.
Good for the journey up there, good for the Highland Road.
What are these now? 25, 30?
I'd recommend sort of paying around 30 for an early, but a sports pack one.
Yeah.
Honestly, a sports pack is essential.
Yeah.
But for glass key ones, you're looking more towards the 40 mark, I would say, for a 470 glass key one. But still, for sub 40 grand, a proper V12, and there's not much else that does all of that for that money. My guess was that you'd like it more than you thought you would.
You were absolutely right. I did like it much more than I thought I would.
So for me, it was the Dad B9. Maybe right now, you're not ready for it, but what about in X amount of years' time, when you become a granddad, could it be the Granddad B9 for you?
It's gonna have to wait a long time for that.
And on that bombshell, we hope you also enjoyed the episode where all four of us tried to fit in that car.
Also sign up to Sports and Touring and Dad Cars.
And JayEmm on Cars. Hope you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and if you want to see more like this, hit the notification bell, which of course brings us to the end of this video on JayEmm Friends.